So I titled this Africa, Finding Africa in the Bible, and I literally just had to find a way to make it because this is about knowledge of self. And this knowledge of self is how the Bible has the discovery of everything, right? But then this knowledge of self is how we know ourselves, how we get to know everything about how life began and everything, right? But in that knowledge, there is a knowledge of self, but then this knowledge of self, should not become a knowledge of self destruction. And that is what it has become because everything that we have known has turned into a distraction or destruction in one form or another. So I was just making this as a declaration for what I've always thought, what I've always imagined, my journey to knowing the Bible deeply and intimately began with me trying to have a knowledge of self whereby I was asking God in prayer form why it seems that black people are so different in this world. And I wanted to get that knowledge for myself. And this is how I started reading the Bible. And this is how I discovered Africa in the Bible. And Africa, as it is described, is the first place that is mentioned in Genesis when God is creating everything in the garden. He mentions Ethiopia and he says from Ethiopia, this is where this river is flowing. So in Ethiopia, this is the word for Africa. So in this utopia, Ethiopia, this was a place where there was a blessing that was placed by God when he placed that river and mentioned it. So this is the knowledge of the self, right? So, for example, this Bible in this verse, like it's speaking about Africa, right? And so God created everything. And then this is chapter 2 in Genesis. It says that chapter 2, verse 12, and the gold of that land is good. Verse 13, the name of the second river, Gihon, that encompasses the whole land of Ethiopia. So Ethiopia in ancient maps was also called, Africa was also called Ethiopia. I'm trying to find the book if it's close by with a map, but I'm sure I've uploaded a picture of that before, which is a map of Africa as it's named Ethiopia. So, discovering more of that, I was asking myself what it means to know that. And for the journey that I was on, I started researching and learning that God actually did create all the people in the world to be the way that He intended them to be. And all of the people are actually mentioned in the Table of Nations when the genealogies are being discussed. This is in Genesis as well. Genesis, gene, generation, from that word. This is the the general generation of every gene. So from this is when the word of God would speak for itself and would end up come in, would end up rediscovering itself. All right, you can just put it there. Thank you. All right. So, in the whole operation of that, that's the whole general. It's okay. Thanks. So, bye. So, from from that general understanding from the the book of genes, this is when no, I'll call you later. Okay. All right. So in in the operations of the Spirit of God, He will have um, a way of speaking to each individual. And some of the ways that people would understand the Word of God will be different, but discovering the Word of God is essential. And the declaration that has to be made is to fulfill the decree to find God and hear how He speaks, because He has like seven spirits that are the seven candles. So there's seven different ways and seven various ways, like the seven colors of the rainbow. And this variation is also seen in the different genes, the seven colors of the rainbows, the seven spirits of God, the many ways He speaks, and the many ways that He was generating. And the rainbow is actually also in this same chapter where He's speaking about the genes, when Noah and Noah's children are repopulating the entire world, and that is the genes in Genesis. So, from from the understanding of the African perspective, the Bible also mentions various ways that Ethiopia, not just Ethiopia, but Ophir, Havilah, and all of these places were the key trading places. And what has been is what shall be, right? So, what is important about understanding the gold of Avila is that gold is mentioned by God in Genesis, and the love of gold has usually been seen like for the love of money, that's the root of all evil. But when God mentions the gold in a certain place called Havilah, in the place that He's mentioning, He says this gold is good. And the goodness of that place is seen by that blessing. So it's also important to realize the various ways that God blessed different places. So when that was hidden, it was put in a spiritual form that is always accessible, which is the Word of God. So to pray for this revelation is to discover what God has given in the form of His Word and what He has already placed, what He has already put. So the story of Put is so interesting, which is the land where they got so much gold, the gold of Ophir, which is being discovered, and the place where they would transport the gold, it ended up in the temple of God. So this gold was first of all found in the earth in Genesis, and this gold is later on revealed to also be in heaven in Revelation, because we discover in Revelation chapter 4, which I will just read, and then we will do as the elders do, which is to pray. This is why this is such an emergency broadcast, because if I do not do this, am telling you there's so many videos that I've been making, but just because I don't know, something happened, so I just had to just send it out, because knowledge of self is the instruction, but then knowledge of self can be knowledge of self distraction or destruction. Like how we have so much knowledge in this day and age, you can have any information you want at the snap of a finger, but that knowledge has not fed into our lives, it has not made us fruitful, because we are not instructed in the knowledge of self, which is the true knowledge of self, which is I am that I am, the Word of God. So with the Word of God, this is the knowledge of self, but everything else is sort of knowledge of self destruction. And that is the lovers of self and that whole mentality to do with gold and uh, uh, being that, like having this knowledge of self destruction. This is the distraction of the age. This is why Isaiah is saying, you will see but see not, hear but hear not. There's a certain distraction. We'll see all the information, but will not see the true information. We'll hear all the information, but not hear all the information. So this is why it's more important to actually see the word of God, see it manifest. So if we are to pray, like we have to use the word of God to say that, all right, this is the prayer that we have made. So according to the word of God, let it be, and it has to be seen. So that is the knowledge of self. Do we know ourself? And do we know our self power? Or do we know our self destruction? Because what we have seen from the Garden of Eden is that we had the knowledge of self, the knowledge of good and evil. So now we have the knowledge of self instruction or self destruction. So the distraction came through that, slithering serpent. So this is what we have. So when we discover gold, this is the biggest distraction. And when we discover the gold of Ophir, we discover it in a place in Africa, Ethiopia. And then when we're reading more into it, we discover that this gold in Genesis, God said it is good. And we see how good it is because in Revelation, it is revealed that there is gold also in heaven. So, Revelation chapter 4, this would say, and around about Revelation chapter 4, verse 4, and around about the throne were 24 seats, right? And upon the seats I saw 24 elders sitting clothed in white raiment, and they had on their heads crowns of gold. So these are 24 elders, and they're sitting in 24 thrones. So these are revealed to be elders. They're not revealed to be angels, they're not revealed to be anything, so they're elders. So from the olden days, right? The olden days, from the days of Genesis, this is the old elders, right? So this is why we speak of Genesis, genes, the generations, from where it generated, elders, right? That's where the gold is as well. So they also have crowns of gold. Where did their gold come from? According to the Bible, the gold that we have seen in the Bible from the Genesis came from this place, Havilah, the good gold. So this gold from earth, it is also in heaven. And they use it to worship, to give it to God. So when you continue to read, it is revealed. So this is why the book of this Revelation, it's so powerful. This is why Jesus was like, John is, there's no one like him because he had this revelation. And this revelation is to say that these elders in heaven actually worship using gold. This gold, you know, is used in worship by these elders. So, as it says, so I pray that in this day perhaps we'll get a chance, if I do, to talk just about gold. I'll just talk about gold. And I'll just pray that we talk about gold today. And I pray that this will happen because I'll take it from there. But I'll stop here with um, the discovery of Africa in the Bible and the discovery of Africa and Ethiopia, land of Havilah, and where these rivers flow and connect. This is where the gold that is good is found. Even though for the love of money, all of the evil has come, and the love of money brought so many evils upon Africa, as we can agree that slavery, slave trade, all of those things were actually evil. So all of those evils came because of Africa's gold, right? But the gold was intended for good, to worship God, which is to say, it goes all back to God. He created it, He received it, but it is given on the crowns. So we'll talk about gold, why it's on the head, why it's not on the feet, but it goes to God's feet. And why it's so important. Well, I don't know everything about gold, but just the information from the Bible about gold is interesting. And from the word of God, having the word of God itself is golden. So, as the elders do, I'm going to close this with a prayer, and I'll pray to ask for God's revelation to open the floodgates, be it gold, be it whatever, in this year, in this time, in this age. I also pray that the connection of God is stronger than ever in my life, in your life, in the truthfulness of what is what is authentic. Authentic is a word that starts with AU, and AU is the symbol for gold, which is AU 79, which is aurum, the Latin name for gold, aurum. So the AU is also the AU for audio, the AU for aurum, the audio. So these crowns make an audible sound when they're thrown at the feet of God. And this word of God is what created them in the beginning. So the resonance of gold should also follow you. The resonance of God comes from that. This is what gives us this power to worship and this power to believe in Him. But this gold of Ophir found its way into the temple. This gold of Ophir came from a place called Havilah, and this gold of Ophir found its way into heaven. So from the first place on earth to the heavens, in heaven, that is how the elders themselves used to worship, and that is how the elders have been revealed to be worshiping 24 hours a day as they sit on the throne around God, giving Him advice and watching like a watch, which has 24 hours on a clock. So each moment, like money never sleeps in this case because of that gold that they have. So there's so much more to talk about in reference to gold, but I do thank you. So this prayer is for that revelation, for the knowledge of self. Let the knowledge of self not be knowledge of self-destruction, let it not bring distraction. And I'm also really perhaps guilty of that. That's why it's been revealed to me, and that's why I have been forced to drop everything and make this video. like, so it's also for me to know when, I cannot literally function. And some of these things I do not because I enjoy to be in front of the camera, but it's actually just because for me there is no choice. So it's just something like it's burning in me. For example, this whole issue, it's been on my mind in so many different ways, and I've tried to explain it so many different times. But for some reason, right now is the only time it has just come out. So let that continue, and let the flow of whatever is in your life, whatever is inhibiting whatever flow, let that knowledge of instruction bring you to the flow of these rivers. These rivers flowed in the places of gold. So find your providence and find your flow and be in that. And I pray that God will guide you. Peace and blessings.